If you've never seen a signed 1952 Mickey Mantle, this is your chance. We're sitting down with Matty C, talking about his amazing collection and getting some of the best insight in the hobby right now.
My older cousin um, was a collector from his older brother, my other cousin. And so they were into it. They played baseball. They're from Staten Island, so they played baseball at Farrell. I was in Brooklyn, and I would just always see them with cards. And one day, he was in town visiting, and he took me down to the corner store, and it was like, "Oh, you got to get a pack of cards." It was 86 tops, and I got a good in it. And then I had seen the Mattingly, I forget, and it just made such an impression. There was something about the composition of the 86 Topps Mattingly that just the white with the black with the stark font and the photo and the way that the focus was pulled so the background was blurry and the dirt on the floor. It was just it was like pop art, that set was very quintessential 80s font and everything. And so that was my first go round. And then he also called me around the same time. I remember I was at my grandmother's house and he was like, "There's a card called Jose Canseco. It says rated rookie on it. You got to get this. You got to get this now, And so it was like a hot tip, right? And then I didn't know about Donruss. There was one store in the neighborhood, sort of the outskirts of the neighborhood, that would have Donruss and rack packs. I remember seeing because that was like high end relative to Topps. That was I mean, it wasn't quite analogous to when Upper Deck hit, but or when I remember when Score hit or when Sportflix hit, there was like a new thing and it was like a thicker stock or there's something different about it. But I remember laying eyes on 86 Donruss and that striped design was also striking. And so they just even back then, just the look, the aesthetic, the design, as well as being into the game and the players and looking at the box scores all the time. So that's how I got into it.
That's awesome. Yeah. We've spoken about being in New York, and I think 81 and 82 Flair and Donruss and all that stuff, I don't think was a big deal. But 84 was. Now, where we were, Topps was everywhere. Topps had it so on lock that Donruss was like kind of a treat or whatever. Like, I didn't really get it that often, but I remember the 86 Canseco, the rated rookies, all those sets, the Bojack, like that was crazy. And when that came out, people were like, wow. And I was like, wow, because we never found it. I had one hobby store on Metropolitan Avenue called Fun Stuff years ago. You go there, like he might have a pack of Donruss there, and it was more money. It was like maybe like $1.50, where Topps packs were like 50 cents or 65.
And the 84 Donruss, the Mattingly was who had everyone wanted the Topps. It was like the Donruss was like we didn't even know where to find it. We didn't even know what was going on with it. And then you'd see it at like a show somewhere, like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah,
that's it.
So you posted that card. That's one of my favorite cards. As a kid, I never had one, and then I bought a great like a couple of years ago, and just a great card to have. Amazing.
When I look at it, they do those scans of the human brain. It's like I'm sure if you scanned our brains when we look at that card, it's like everything is calm and like I think my cells get younger when I look at that image. You know what I mean? I just go right back to that. I mean, that's the thing is those cards hold as much value. I don't mean value in a monetary sense. They hold as much value as any other cards because those are the ones, and it's the same if someone grew up and it might be the 63 Rose or the 68 Ryan or a card in the 50s for someone older than that. There's the cards you grew up, loving and exalting, right? Whether it was because they were your contemporaries, those cards, those players that you were watching, or for example, looking at, the 52 Mantle, I would see that in CCP, just a picture of it, the price guide, the precursor price guide to Beckett, or in Beckett. That's the only place I would see those Mantles. And it was almost always Mantles. Sometimes it was another card, but that's where you'd see them, right? So you covet those things, and that's why today the Mattingly, the Canseco, the Bo Jackson, they hold as much they feel as important to me today as they did then, you know, maybe more so because I want to feel young.
Yeah.
So true. I mean, I have some of like Ricky rookies and Mattingly rookies and Ken Griffey's these are all cards that I got as a kid, and I don't even want to grade them. They're just in a little box. These are my cards, and they I can never I almost feel like if I grade them, I'm doing something wrong to them. Like they don't need to be graded. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't. They're in the top loader, and I don't whatever. If I graded them, what they're going to be a 3 or a 4. Who cares? It's just like these are. I remember when I got this one. I remember who I traded that to get this one, and that's the beauty of it. Like that's really the beauty of it. But in terms of Donruss and Fleer, same thing. I grew up in Yonkers. Listen. They didn't have Topps. They didn't have Fleer or Donruss anywhere where I live. My cousins live like an hour away in Poughkeepsie, upstate, and they used to have Donruss and Fleer up there. Wow. They did, and they had a little store, and they had them in there. And I used to tell my uncle, he'd give me anything. He'd be like, "What do you want?" Yeah. So I'd bring them back home. My friends would go, "Where the hell did you get these at?" And I would be like, "Yeah," but something about the Topps was still. It was just still the top. You know what I mean? It was here and. I didn't think about Donruss and Fleer. I didn't think they would even be worth any. I didn't think they were like you could never compare anything to Topps. That's
they seem like also rans as well, especially the early ones. Like you were saying, it was 84 they really kicked in, and design wise too. The 84 Fleer is a very clean, beautiful design. The strawberry, I remember the strawberry was a card I loved where he's just kind of like this with the bat, and the 84 Fleer update, that was a mythical set growing up. It was like, I remember looking in the price guides like, wait, there's a Puckett in 84? There's a Clemens in 84? You know what I mean? Like, what set is this? Of course, Gooden had to traded. Strawberries traded was huge back then.
That's traded. I have that card. I mean, such a great card because years ago when I was a kid, you couldn't get that. And for whatever reason, there was a short print run of those. And the 84 Fleer with the Puckett. There's a Clemens in there, I think.
Yes, Puckett and Clemens and Gooden.
A Gooden.
And Saberhagen, Rose.
That's an incredible set, and even the design, like I like that basic design on that Fleer. Sometimes Fleer for me is hit or miss. I think Fleer's done like some of the best inserts in history. Like one year they do a terrible set, the next year they do the greatest set. But they got it together in the 90s. But that set and the fact that there's just not a lot of those cards. I mean, you see them on eBay for a lot of money. I saw a PSA 10 Puckett. It was up there, for a card.
Oh, they still do. Yeah, they still do. That's why for me, the 80s for vintage stuff. I like the cards as long as it's centered and as long as it's got a quality image, focused, good color, not washed out. I'm very I look for a little bit of corner wear. I look for an unobtrusive crease or a wrinkle, something to keep the price down, something where I don't want to have to be concerned with what it costs or what I spent on it. I like to know that at that price point, it's a luxury good. It's a toy. It's something you want to keep, right? So I like that. With the 80s, it's much easier to find 8s and 9s that are, especially the 9s that are effectively 10s. I mean, I can't tell you when I first got back into card collecting post college with graded cards, I used to send in so many 9s that became 10s, and you're going, what kind of fucking idiot, pardon my French, is going to pay for the 10? Like it's the same card. I just had it as a 9. Now it's a 10. And someone's going to pay more for it. Like, holy cow. It was just, to quote your boy Rizzuto back there, it was really eye-opening, and then 7s, I had 7s become 9s. I had 5s become 7s. Then I had some 8s become 7s. And it's just, you begin to see that it really is about the card, and it's about, so yes, you do see some of those 80s 10s going for a lot of money. But you could find those same cards, literally the same card, just in a 9 holder because it didn't get the love that day, or it didn't, it's just.
I think that's what makes your page so great. I learned a lot of stuff that you don't think about, like you knew, but you don't think about it until like you break it down where you're like, look at this 5 and look at this 9. Like I'd rather have this 5 because you know what I mean? Like, and you break that stuff down, and it's like really interesting because you're like, listen, if the card is for your PC and it's your card, whatever PSA graded it, you're the judge of what the card is, really.
Correct.
You know what I
Correct.
mean? And you put that to my light where it's like, you know, obviously everybody says, you know, buy the card, not the grade. I get it. But when you put cards side to side and you really look at certain cards and you're like, you know what? I'm going to base this card off of a PSA grader that may have had a bad day or maybe didn't know about a card. And this card is centered and this, you know, you break it down, man. I always told Joe that I was like, we got to get this kid on because like the way he does it, people talk about it, but you show it.
Well, that's the key is everyone's, you know, said buy the card, not the holder, buy the card, not the holder. But let's look at what that really means. You know, like that's the thing is like people will say, you know, hey, so I'm looking for this card in a 7. And, you know, can you help me out? And I'm like, well, the first thing I could hopefully help you out with is why are you looking for it in a 7? Aren't you just looking for the card?
Yes.
I understand you have let the budget be a number you're going to spend. Don't let it be a grade number, right? Because you're like, oh, there's a nice 7. Whatever the number, if someone's hung up on a grade number, I tell my cousin this all the time. He was like, he wanted a 64 rows. He was like, oh, I want a nice, you know, 7, or maybe an 8. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, what about this one? And he didn't see it beyond the thing. He goes, yeah, definitely. I was like, okay, great. It was a 5. And
Yeah.
it made him completely happy. And I showed him, I sent him a bunch of 7s, a bunch of 8s, and the 5 looked better, you know, because it also depends how you look at them. If you look at them under a loop, sure. But if you're looking at your cards from a casual viewing distance, if I have a card here like this Ruth, and I'm just like here looking at it under this light, you know, I don't, what's that?
It looks incredible. It's like you're not looking at flaws. It's like if you have some beautiful old, like a 68 Mustang, there's going to be some flaws on it. But you take a nice picture of that part, you're just looking at it. This car's ridiculous, right? And it's the same thing. Like, you know, I will take centering over some little frayed corners or some little tiny mark or something. I mean, it's so crazy. And the inconsistency is also an issue. Like, I have 2. I think it's a 98 Bowman's Best atomic refractor of Ken Griffey Jr. One's a 9, one's an 8. The 8 is insane. It sparkles. It looks amazing. The 9, I paid more for that 9. And when I looked at it, I was like, you know, because you can't tell on eBay a lot of cards, especially those kind of 90s cards. The 8 is way better, and I love the 8. I like the 8 more. I'm all about most of my cards I'm not going to sell. You know, I pick weird cards and oddball stuff and stuff like that. Box paddles. Joe's the same way. He had, you know, a lot of these.
Oh, I love those 86 Topps, the box Mattingly, the red Mattingly.
That's that whole thing. I got the Gooden 85 Donruss box panel.
I love that one. Yeah, I got that one signed by him. I like that better than the regular Donruss.
Oh yeah, it's one of the coolest cards.
Great photo.
You'll appreciate this one. It's an OPG.
Oh wow, that's a great autograph from
and I got this cheap because it says trading card, but for me, I know what it is, and the person who sold it probably has no idea that this is even a box panel OPG.
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing. I look, you'll appreciate this. I bought this raw about a year ago. It's a Munson rookie OPG. Now, if you look at this card, they gave me a 5 on this thing. I looped it. This card is probably, I would say 8 or a 9, easy. There's a tiny smudge under the Y, right? There's a little black mark. You probably can't see it, but
it looks great. You put that in a wall display stand 3 feet away and look at it. I guarantee, I bet my whole collection, you would not, if we switched it around and play, you know, the game at Yankee Stadium where they mix it all up and you got to pick what it's under. If we covered them and you put it next to a worse centered 8.
Yes.
Your eye is going to like that one better.
No, I mean, like, it's like there's nothing. It's almost like this card came out of, it just came out of it just came out of a pack. It's just, there's that little mark, and on the back, there's like a few tiny marks. But in terms of like centering, sharpness of the corners, the things that you love to look at. So yeah, I wanted to degrade it and see what it was, but I knew something would happen. But at the end of the day, this card's never leaving my desk. So it's like
trading card is good. This was trading card. This was listed just as trading card.
Oh,
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And
I don't care. Now it's not trading card, but so yeah, so that was there's still a lot that haven't migrated over.
yes, you can
But
find
yeah,
a lot of deals with the trading cards. I mean,
Yeah.
and the corners, again, it's like the card, if you ask the people who manufactured and designed the cards, they wanted them to be centered. They wanted the image to be focused and not blurry, and they wanted them to be handled by children. I then take the next logical step and say it's therefore organic for the cards to exhibit evidence of that handling from children. Right? Therefore, a centered card with a great quality focused image that has some evidence of handling is ideal, right? Whereas a card that has perfect sharp corners, which let's face it, there's a lot of doctoring that goes on for vintage cards to create those corners, right? But the card is not perfectly centered. That's a suboptimal defect at printing, right? So the ideal state was centered coming out of the factory, not off-centered. That's a that was miscut. That was an error coming out of the factory. So I don't like paying for the corners, right? If the two cards are identical, then I would rather, to me, the better card. Let's say I have, for example, I think I have an example here. So I've had this card in beautiful 8s, right? This is
50. Ready?
a 57 Mantle.
Oh, it's a 50. I gotta make your thing bigger so I can see these cards, man. I can only see.
So I had this card here. I've had it in 8s before, right? Now, I can tell you, having had it in 8s, the epiphany that I experienced was when you have a card like this in your case or on your desk, you take them from the rack, whatever, and you have it next to the 8, and you're standing 3, 4, 5 feet away, and you think this one, your eye prefers the 1.5 because the centering's a little better, because the focus is a little better, because the color is a little bolder, right? And and in your brain, the truth is I prefer this. And you think this cost me 500 and that cost me 13,000.
That's a 1.5.
It just goes ding. It's like there's a huge light that goes on your head and you're like, huh? So like, yeah, no, I had this. I've had several, I had several 8s. I used to have them in very high grade years ago. And what would happen is I'd come across one like this. And the way I collect is I'll have several at a point, and then I'll reach a point where I'll look at the ones I've accumulated and pick the one I love the best. And then I'll get rid of the others, right? So it's kind of like constantly aggregating and then culling and all of getting the one that my eye likes the most, right? But this one has like a little wrinkle across the middle. And even looking at it now, I can't see the wrinkle. And that's why it's a 1.5. So I shit you not. So I had this card next to an 8, and it made me feel like an imbecile for having purchased the 8 because my eyes clearly preferred the $500 card to the $13,000 card.
I'm telling you, me and Joe, we like you'll post stuff and like through the years, whatever, we'll be like, did you see that? And like it's like it, but when you show it and you put your little paragraph in and talk about it, it changes the way you think of things. And it like as a collector, it's actually a positive thing because sometimes you're stuck on it's a 7, it's an 8, it's a 6. You know what? It means absolutely nothing because sometimes let me look at the card and take away the whole
Yes.
slab. Let me just look at the card. If I look like Joe, didn't you buy a Satchel Paige that with a pinhole?
Yeah, I just got a Satchel Paige.
It's beautiful though.
And this card is gorgeous. Perfectly,
color, everything.
Old, and it has a little pinprick. Now, when I first saw the card, I didn't even know it had a pinprick. I was like, oh,
there you go.
53 Topps and some other stuff. And I'm going through it, and I'm like, and he had a Clemente rookie too. I thought it was too much, so I passed on it, and the pinprick was kind of seeable. This one, I didn't even notice it in the beginning, and I talked to my guy. I was like, "Hey, what do you want for this?" And he's like, just telling me, and I'm like, "Why you only want $300 for this car?" Oh, there's a pinprick in it. I was like, "Give me that," because
Bank error in your favor is what
right,
that is.
and, even from if I was gonna, and I don't, it's a personal card, like my entire collection for the most part, but that card, it's a 1.5 or whatever PSA gave it. I forget. I don't even care. Could care less, even if they gave it an authentic. But that card, compared to other 1.5s, there are 1.5s for like 700 or $500, whatever, that look like it went through the laundry.
Of course.
Exactly, right?
But also, but take your satchel.
Perfect.
Compare it to one that has, let's say, much worse centering, that has a blurry image, but it's a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
And then, so what is the better card? The one with the pinhole is the better card.
That's crazy.
Right? It's better because it looks better. And it's better because I use the phrase on my IG all the time, pound for pound. Everything is pound for pound, right? So I'd rather spend $500 and get this eye appeal than spend $250,000 and have this card in a 9. Now, that's assuming the 9 has the same centering and the same image print quality. If it doesn't, no brainer, I think this is the superior card because
those tops, sometimes they're very dark, the 57s. So
drab. It's a very drab looking set.
Yeah.
Some of whatever. Some of them look great, but then as the old printing press went on and on, you see some of the ones before they change the ink, and it's like, holy shit, it's a dark set.
Grading is separate from collecting. Grading is its own thing. It's a useful tool, but it can't be the alpha and omega of collecting because it's your eye, and you can't say, well, that's a 7. I mean, look at that Ruth picture I have on my IG. It's like, who would say that 7 is better than the 2? The 2 is clearly a superior visual experience than the 7.
Yep.
And yet the super premium for the 2 ran 15 G's, but the 7 was like 55 grand. That's a self-own. That's like an own goal in soccer if you buy the 7 to me. It's like that's no badge of honor, man. That's as J. Rue would say, you're playing yourself, man. Like playing yourself, So it's like that's the thing is if you let grading run you, you're playing yourself. You know what I mean? Whereas you can play that system. It's just like hitting, hitters hit mistake pitches, right? So when they put a beautiful card in a 1 or a 2, or they put a 7 in a 5 holder, I hit that mistake. I hit that, right? So it's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Now look, if a card's a 9 or a 10 and it's worthy of being a 9 or a 10, okay, I tip my cap, great. But I'd still rather have that same 10 with like an imperceptible pinhole or wrinkle and save all the money.
And those older cards, like I'm putting like a 41 play ball set together, right? And a lot of those cards are like, the corners, but like I'm looking at the color. Like it's like even with the 52 tops or 53, it's like I don't care if the corners are actually like rounded.
That's cool.
Wow.
So I've had this again. So same thing. I've had this card, different copies over the years. I started out, I had a 6. I found a 2.5 that threw the 6 a beating because the 6 had like these striations that some of them get like through the print lines. It almost looked like a cracking. They're not textured though. It's just the way the lines go. So for this card, what's really, aside from centering, the 41 Dimaggio, it's the registration of the inks. If you look at the bat, if you look at his hands, if you look at the outline of his body, it can get very ghostly. It almost looks like there's a double image. So to have that focused when the card is centered, I will take that in a 3 or a 2 or a 1 or a 4, whatever it is. The point is those attributes are rarer and contribute more to eye appeal than do corners, right? So this card in a 7 with blurriness and 70-30 centering, to me, is inferior than a 2 or a 3 like this. But
so good, man.
So I'm spending less for more visual appeal. Like it's just that's what happens when you free your mind from the, the grade is the thing, right?
Well,
But I'll also pay for money for a two. You know what I mean? If the two is the one for me, but the way I look at it, like, well, if the two looks like, where's that card? And so if the two looks like a 6,
man.
I'll happily pay. So I blew out 2s for this, right? I went like whatever it was, 3+ money, but for me to get the same eye appeal, I'd have to find a centered, beautifully focused 6. So hey, it's in a 2, awesome. So that's how I look at it. It's like my ideal is I'd like them all to be 1s. I mean, like,
It's
something on the back, a little rip on the back, like that's fantastic.
Some the colors, some just, I don't know. And also with like older cards, it's like sometimes like even if it's beat up, it just looks like almost like I want to know like it was in good hands. Was it on a bike? Was it in somebody's pocket that he folded? Like I have a Dimaggio from the 41, and it's like it was folded in half, but the colors are so vibrant that I don't even care. It's just like who had this card? You know what I mean?
Like
And
you're
like
saying, it's got to look. It looks the part. You know what I mean? It looks the part. And again, it was made to be handled.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't made to be on some card doctor's thing, and he's like pressing it down and spooning the corners and reshaping the corners. And so no, it's nice. That's another nice thing with those cards. When you have a card that has that corner wear, it's like it's not the same. See, if I had a vintage card in like an 8+, I'm thinking, who worked on this? This had to be worked on. There's no way this went this long like that. So I like that. I like that. That's why again, same thing with the 4.5 Mantle I have. I like that, knowing that, especially with that one, I was contacted by the owner who pulled it from a pack after I won the card. So
What?
yeah, so that was really cool. So I was contacted by the owner's son actually, who said, hey, that was my dad's card and my card. It was our family, blah blah. We drove to get it graded and blah. And I said, hey, can I talk to your dad? And so then I did an audio interview with me and my son and the guy who pulled it from a pack. So I heard the story of how he got the card, how he saved up the money, where he got it, where did he grow up, what tobacco shop on what street did he get it?
Come
So I got
on.
the whole history of the card. Yeah.
I mean, that makes you love the card 100 times over, like right there. Because like to get this, oh my goodness.
Yes, man.
That's the card you're talking about where you got
That's the card, yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
so this card, so the guy's name was Roger Larson, and he got it. He saved up money from a paper route, and it was in Morrison, Illinois, and he got it from the tobacco shop on the main street there. So it's like just to know, because cards change hands so much. So it's so great to know like a 50s card, to know who pulled it from the pack. It's like, to me, it's so cool.
What do you mean? That like that makes it a 10. Like
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? It's just like because
That's a beautiful one. Let me ask
that is so cool, man.
think about, I mean, I see now 52 mantles that are absolutely destroyed and people are paying like 20 G's for them. Isn't that crazy? Like, it's funny when you talk about, like, I buy a lot of like tobacco cards, authentic. I don't care if they're altered, whatever, because I'll get something that looks like a 7 for like whatever, $300, even a Hall of Famer. But it's kind of crazy because I see people paying for, like, I had an opportunity to get maybe like last year I was thinking about grabbing, I still want to get an Aaron rookie. And it was one it was kind of affordable, but I was just like, man, I'm not paying this money for a card that looks like shit. So if I'm priced out at this point, whatever, I'm priced out.
Well, you got to find the ones like your Satchel. You got to find and I don't just mean the ones, find like a 1 or 2. You got to find a 1 or a 2 that looks like
amazing. Like
that's why, like, I wouldn't want, like, for example, like the Gaudy Ruths. I don't want to pay what they cost in 4s and up.
Yeah.
So I don't. I have a 2, I have a 2.5, and very happy, right? So, and that's the fun. It's like it's like waiting for the pitcher to make a mistake. right? You got to look for that Heron rookie. If you keep looking, you'll find a 1 or a 2 that looks phenomenal. And then you just have to hope that the person selling it isn't like us, who knows that it looks great.
That's the point. And there's a lot of people
change now.
There's a lot of people that sell just by the grade, and you know, you can find, like you just said, you can. And I'm telling you, watching your stuff made me get on some eBay hunts, and you know, there's some good, like, we know we had a guy, cards with a story. He does a fun Wednesday night Twitter vintage, you know, sale, and there's hundreds of things going on, and you find stuff on there. But like a lot of those guys know what's going on. But eBay, you could find stuff that guys are just selling the grade, but the card, you could steal the card. You know,
you want those ones like this. Like I found this one. There's another card I've owned several 7s and 8s.
Man,
several. And I shit you not, this is the best centered of this. Blows away for centering.
What about the color on that though?
Color's good. The focus could be a little better.
Yeah,
I've never seen the centering. So the point being that this card has some mild. I mean, the front,
can you see it?
I don't know why. Maybe I put it under light.
Is that a newly graded card or is it an older one?
I don't know why. Looking at it now, it's a 1. There's no crease.
That's amazing, man.
No, here's what it is. Here's what it is. There's some wrinkling in the back that doesn't come through the front.
Now here's the thing with that though. It's like a piece of art. If you saw a painting somewhere and you were going to buy the painting, and on the back of it was some writing or something, would you care?
No.
Exactly. So what?
And that's why, to me, as a 1, it's just like dynamite. Similarly, I remember I had this one here. I showed this to some friends of mine at auction houses. We were all laughing because they're like, "Oh, you got to get that regraded." But I'm like, no, it's like a badge of honor. It shows that you hunted and found it like this. So I had this card in 8.5, and I had the 8.5 next to this in little stands on my desk. And I would always wind up preferring this because it was so, when you had it next to the 8.5, it was so much brighter. And so this card here.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And so, you know, it looks more like probably like a 6.5, 7. Why is it a 4.5? I don't know. I've had people loop it just more for talking, but I'd rather leave it like this because
exactly.
To me, the one-way grading can be fun and not a source of annoyance, right? Because so many people get worked up. Like when I post those juxtapositions, I'm not worked up about it. I'm having fun with it. I'm enjoying it. It's like, as long as you're on the low grade side of that equation, you're on the right side of that equation.
That's it.
I wouldn't want to be the guy paying for the 7 or 8s, and I was that guy at one point, right?
Well, it was like this. Ricky Henderson was my favorite play growing up. So, and I always had his rookie cards, but they were beat up. They were my cards, and Joe knows. Like during COVID and during that, I was like, I gotta find a Ricky. I want an auto Ricky rookie. I looked for like a year and a half, and one day I came across this, and you know, it's a 7 and a 10. Now, it's centered front and back.
So what is it? Just the corner? They say
no. There's a print bubble like right here. You can't even see it. So when I took it to someone and they said the only thing that I see on this is there's a little like circle of a print bubble that's right here. But for me, I looked at it. It's a 9. Has to be a 9 if it wasn't the bubble. If there wasn't that print little mark there. But I mean, the card is like it's. See,
when we were kids, that to me is like a mint card. Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I think of when I used to go to Renata Galasso and me and my cousins, we'd go through like.
Wait, hold on. We got to ask you about that.
Time out.
Hold on. Matt,
go ahead, Joe.
Let me just pull up. Show me the 54 Bowman Mantle again. So we can provide some proof of what we're talking about here that we're not showing. Because I'm going to show you. That's a 1.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you my 1 now.
Okay. Got it.
Now. This card has serious sentimental value to me because my uncle bought it in the shoebox of 54 Bowman. But my point is, this is a 1, and this thing is beat to shit, and yours is a 1. So this is when I'm buying vintage, you know, I collect Bob Gibson, one of my vintage guys. I'll take a 4, a 6 over like an 8. That's $700, $800, $900. A beautiful 4 that's like it's centered perfect over an 8 that's clearly not. It's like I said before, it's off center. So if you're gonna put an OC on certain cards, but you're giving 8s that are not 9s because they're like
dude, it's someone else's rule, man. So why let that be your rule?
Yeah.
They're not the grading, whoever made the grading criteria that got codified and now the standards that they grade with, that dude isn't my boss of my collection. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Who the fuck made that guy my boss? I don't kowtow to that guy. I decide what I think is better. So for me, if I were grading, I would not weight corners that much, right? Certainly, I would not give a mint 9. I would not give mint status to a card that had perfect corners, but was not. To me, mint means it's perfect. You got to have, and that's the other thing is like the notion of the gem mint 10. That's a load of horse shit as well. That was just made up to make money. Oh, you see, this is mint,
right.
But this one here is gem mint.
Right.
Gem, what the fuck is gem? What is that? Like when we were growing up, it was like, this is mint, right?
Yeah.
Something was mint, it was great. It's mint, right? There's no more mint, it's just, to me, it was just another way to more finely parse it, to charge money, to charge a premium, and to prey on insecure egos and be like, what? And that's basically what the whole registry does, right? It's like designed to predate on that insecurity of like, well, this says I have the best. This says I have the best. All right, well, let's see what your cards look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, wow, that's a nice $80,000 9 that's tilted and blurry. You know what I mean? So it's just, again, for me, my eye and the enjoyment my eye gets from the card is the boss.
Well, that's the best way. The sketchy part about it is where if a card was graded by PSA 10 years ago, that was a 10. If they graded it now, it might be an 8. Because you see, if you look at 10s from 10 years ago, you could look at it with your own eyes and go, that's a 9. It's like there's no way that's 10, but it's a 10. So
it's so bad. Inconsistency is what kills me, and nobody can give me an explanation. I don't even grade 90s inserts, rare cards anymore, because I know I'm getting an 8. Especially if it's a Griffey or a Bonds, I'm getting an 8. If it's Albert Bell, I'm getting a 10. And that's a whole other thing. But it's just a thing that's so crazy when you think about it. Like you said, you're taking somebody else's opinion and you're letting it like ruin your collection, especially
and people get bent out of shape about it. Like, to me, that's the point of juxtaposing cards in different grades or in the same grade to expose how arbitrary and how subjective it is. Like the flaw doesn't lie in an inherently subjective system being much more inconsistent than it should be, right? That to me is not the major flaw. The flaw is on the part of guys who comprise the collecting community, who let that frustrate and annoy and chafe them, right? It should be very easy to shrug it off and hit the mistakes and save a ton of money in the process, or put that money towards true rarity over condition rarity. Because let's face it, that's what it is, right? It's like it's creating this condition rarity, which the tragic irony is it's not even in lockstep with eye appeal, the grades in some cases, right? So it doesn't even correspond. And it really comes down to this. If you asked me for my opinion on the same thing multiple times, and each time I gave you a different opinion with no new information in hand, how much would you put my opinion on a pedestal? How much would you value my opinion, let alone pay money for it? Right? So when you think of it that way, isn't it absurd? It's like, hey, Matt, what do you think of this? Blue. Hey, Matt, what do you think of this? Yellow. Hey, Matt, what do you think of this? Purple. Hey, Matt, and then you're going around, well, Matt's opinion means everything, and I'm going to spend money on it, and I'm going to do my whole collection according to it. And it's like, it should be like, no, this guy can't give me the straight answer twice, So to me, it should be very easy to dismiss it and shrug it off, or at least not assign it so much weight, right? But I do think that, look, there's value in it in terms of it's nice sometimes to have valuable cards protected, right? For autographs, especially, it's nice sometimes, because there's a level of expertise there that maybe a layperson, a collector doesn't possess, so that's nice too. Although if I'm spending a big amount of money on an autograph, I want there to be provenance. I want to know where it came from. And again, that's very hard. That's why for me, for the sign mantle, there was only that one. I would only have dreamt, there's 20 that exist, but I was always only after that one because that was the only one where there was a Forbes article, there was a Sports Collectors Daily article, there was on interviews with the guy who owned it, who pulled it from the pack, the story on how he went to get it signed, where he got it signed, the schedules of the teams corroborate that. I needed more than just a third-party grader authenticating it. Certainly that's nice, right? But if you're spending that much, you want there to be provenance beyond the grading label, I think was key.
That's real. Yeah, no, I totally hear that, especially for the Mantles. I mean, Mantles auto has been definitely forged so many times and it's gotten through so many times. So yeah. Especially for that special card, you want to do the right thing with that one. It's unbelievable. To another point you said before, when you were talking about the difference between 9 and 10s, me and Joe were talking about this at one point when Beckett came out with the pristine or whoever it was. And listen, I literally have over 1,000 graded cards, and I love graded cards. I like to keep them safe, like you said, especially autos. I like to know that they're. But I mean, so all of a sudden you're telling me that you guys have been grading cards for many years, and all of a sudden there were never any pristines before, but now these cards are just perfect, and that to me is absolutely absurd.
What you just said is that is exactly analogous to the 9 to 10. Right. Or with SGC, the 9.5 to 10, or with Beckett, the pristine. It's how can we shave this again to create more profit? And by the way, they're playing their game, and let them do that. And that's what we would probably do if we were in their seat.
Sure.
Right? But from our seat, it's like, sure, if you pull it from a pack and you want to get it protected and you get it graded and it gets pristine, cool. Right. But then I would sell that and find the same card in a 9 holder myself. And just absolutely, if I can't see the difference demonstrably, like markedly different to my eye, I'm always going to go with the lower grade that takes less out so I can get something to put it in like, for example, take any graded card, take 52 Mantle. So let's take the 8s. So the 8s are called the 8s and have that value because the grader that day gave it an 8. But if we took the ugliest 8s, cracked them out, and sent them back in 10 times, I bet you 5 out of 10 times at least they come back a 7.5 or lower, right? So the value is all in the sticker. But the sticker would change on a different day from a different grader.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the signed 52 Mantle, it's signed by him, provided it's not a forgery, of course. But the point is, so then it's signed by him. That is irrespective of grade. Right? That its value is because it was signed by him. And that doesn't change. You can grade it a 1, you can grade it a 2, you can grade the auto an 8, you can grade the auto a 9, you can grade the auto a 7. It doesn't fucking matter. The value, you could, if you have one with say provenance, PSA could go under, right? And you still, that card still has all its value because it was signed by him if it has that provenance. Let's assume it's ironclad. So that's what I'm saying, where a condition rarity has its value because of a subjective thing, right? Setting aside the subjectivity of the authenticity of the auto of the same card, So for example, let's say there's one sign. Let's assume for a second for fun, there's one signed M101 Ruth rookie, right? And it's bent. It's got a big bend in it, and it's a 1 with Ruth's autograph. I'd rather have that than the highest graded one.
I totally agree.
Because the highest graded one might not be the highest grade if you graded it again and again, but that one's signed by him no matter what.
True.
That's
Great
what I'm
point.
saying.
It's great,
Right.
great point. I mean, and people don't probably think that way, but that makes the most sense.
So
I
that's
have to
why
go.
I say you save the money and put the money towards, so like have this instead of, let's say if this had 7 corners, right? But the same centering, so I could have this and this, or just this if it said 7. It's no brainer to me.
Wow, look at the color on that, man.
Dude,
That's
we're talking about the rookie. I'm like the Hall of Fame rookie auto guy, and I know that's not technically the rookie, whatever. I'm not going to go into those weeds, but
Of course.
this is the car. Like you have the 52 Mantle auto. That's just ridiculous.
insane. It's not
That
even.
was the grail, man. That was the grail, especially because it could only have been that one, because I had to have the story.
I have to go back because you said a name, and me and Joe always talk about Renata Galasso, and to us, that she's a trendsetter. Like, and I feel like she doesn't get enough credit in the hobby. Now, did you used to go over there back in the days?
Yeah, that was my neighborhood store. We used to go in there. My cousin, I remember we still talk about it in the family, how he was like the best at like picking out a mint card. And he picked a Yount rookie for $10. And we were just wondering, like, that card is so perfect. Surely even the grading companies can't hose you on it. And he did get a 9. It should be a 10, but he did get a 9. So it was like, wow, you were picking out strict 9s by today's standards. And yeah, we used to go in there and she'd have, there'd be a stack of whatever card you wanted. And you just go through it like for a Gwyn rookie or something. It was a blast. And because it was such a unique store too, because it was like a house. It said Renata Galasso. In fact, I have a photo on my wall of Dwight Gooden and here I have the picture. You'll get a real kick out of this. What's your how can I send this to you? You know what I can do? I could send it on Instagram Messenger. Hold on. We'll do some technology here. But yeah, so I have a vintage photo because they used to put out sets. Remember they did the Mattingly set?
Yeah.
The Dr. K set? But yeah, that was my local card shop. I mean, there were
So
thousands.
what part of Brooklyn are you from? Where is that? Like
Bay Ridge.
Bay Ridge. That's awesome.
Weren't they one of the first ones to have, like, I think they had Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle auto in a set?
Yeah.
She was one of the first ones to have like an on-card auto of Willie Mays.
Just want to produce a set where you bought the set and you got like a Mantle auto. I think.
Yep.
It's so crazy. Like what? I mean, wow.
I want to find her. She's still around. I would love to talk to her. I mean, can you imagine the stories she has? Can you imagine?
Yeah, total pioneer. Just just amazing like story. Who was making sets at that time? I think Topps maybe 73 was the first time they put out a set that they were selling as the whole set. I think it was 73. But I mean, the fact that she was just buying packs and ripping them and putting sets together and connecting.
Yeah, it said world's largest hobby card. Did you get the photo? I think I could show it.
If I go to that thing, it's going to destroy. Wow. So that's incredible.
That's unreal.
That's just amazing, bro.
So that was the local car show so the door was behind Gooden, but then the door to where they lived is the wood door that's over Aaron's shoulder.
That's just ridiculous.
I'm just thinking, man, why didn't that must be at 85. I'm like, why didn't I walk by that day?
Oh, can you imagine if you did?
Like, holy shit, that's Dwight Gooden.
Can you imagine?
I wouldn't have recognized Aaron at 9, but
no.
But
Gooden, I mean, even as a Yankee fan, I mean, you didn't care. When Gooden pitched, I was watching the game. I didn't as a diehard Yankee fan, I didn't care.
I used to listen to Gooden starts on my clock radio because we didn't have Because remember, what was the cable station? They came out on cable. Was it like it was sports something?
Sports Channel.
Sports Channel. We
Yep.
didn't have a Sports Channel. So, and then when all those games were there, I would like listen to Gooden on my clock radio.
We had 11 channel. WPIX was the Yanks, and
WPIX was the
WOR
Yanks. Yep.
WOR was the Mets with Kiner's Corner. Remember, you had Kiner's Corner.
Kiner, people sleep on Kiner, man. I want to get I really want to get a Kiner rookie. I like them both. I like the Bowman and the Leaf because I mean people forget. First of all, he was like a celebrity. He was like dating Elizabeth Taylor and all.
He was yeah.
He was like that. He was like that. We know him as this like old white hair guy, but he was like the dapper guy on the scene. But he led the league in homers his first 7 seasons, and 6 of them he led the majors. Can you imagine if someone did that today? The Cards would be like it'd be
Kiner was
remember when McGuire hit 49-87, we were losing our minds.
Yeah.
Imagine if someone did that as a rookie and then the next 6 seasons.
Insane, man. Yeah,
insane. I mean,
what does he have? Like almost 500 home runs, right, for his career?
Yeah, and then there was I think he was the subject of the famous quote. I think it was like Branch Rickey or something. Like he was on the Pirates and he wanted a big raise because he was a megastar. I could be wrong, but I think the quote was about him where the owner said, "We finished last with you. We'll finish last without you."
Wow, that's old school. You can't even say that anymore.
That's some old school shit. Yeah, I think so. I could have my baseball history all wrong, but I think that's the case there. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of was a superhero back then. I mean, he really was. I mean, we know, like you said, we know him as this old man doing their thing, but he was some player. I mean, if you look, now you're older and you start going back to Baseball Reference, you start looking you start going, holy shit, this guy.
That's what happened. I didn't really know about him until like I'm ashamed to say, like it was like post college.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew he was a player, but I didn't know like he was a super stud. I was like,
yeah, no, it's crazy. As a kid, I grew up in a Brooklyn Dodgers house, even though I'm a Yankees fan, but Ralph Kiner all the time. I heard Ralph Kiner all the time. And I just thought Ralph Kiner was this old dude who just a great voice and talked about it. Reminds me of all that. But, you start to look at his numbers. You're like, wow, this guy was a beast.
His Baseball Reference is ridiculous. You're like, I remember seeing like, wait, he led the majors he led the NL 7 seasons in a row and then the majors 6 of those 7 consecutively out the box, right out of the gate.
Another guy like that too that I didn't know growing up, Joe Torre. I didn't know how good of a ball player Joe Torre was.
Yes, he
had rookie hit like 360 one.
There was one season that was bananas. He had like
he was just that. Joe Torre was that good. Even a guy like
that great rookie card with the cup and the 60. That's a great card.
Great. And you know who else too? My uncle I used to talk about as a kid. I would always talk about Dave Winfield. That no one hit the ball harder than Dave Winfield. And he goes, you know who hit the ball harder than any person I ever saw was Dick Allen. And then I was like, yeah, whatever. In the 80s.
And you look at his numbers and you're like, yo, this guy's like. I mean, shit. If Baines is in the hall, I mean that guy was no joke back then. Those are guys that it just wasn't our era.
No.
I look back, like our era slept on, like Dale Murphy slept on. He was the guy growing up.
Man.
Dale Murphy, the man. Steve Garvey was the man. There were a lot of players. Matt Williams. Like, there are so many players from our era that are just, like, slept on big time.
There were great ball players that weren't big in the card hobby, but I find myself when I go through their cards, if I open an old wax box, I'm like, yeah, guys like Andy Van Slyke.
Oh, Andy Van Slyke.
That guy was a great baseball player.
Oh, he was so good.
So good.
He was a great center field. Jim Edmonds.
Yeah. Then going back, like I remember guys that used to just like always terrorize the teams I rooted for. There was like Tim Wallach on.
You know who used to kill the Yankees? Alan Trammell used to destroy the Yankees.
The Tigers. Hell yeah. And
Teddy Higuera.
Eddie Higuera with the Brewers.
He used to kill. He throw shutouts every time. He throw like in the late 80s. He shut us out every game.
Mike Witt was like the Yankee killer, wasn't he on the Angels? Right.
Mike Witt. You got Kevin Brown. Those guys. They killed us back then. We had no pitching. We had Donnie Baseball, Dave Winfield, Ricky Henderson, and we had Dave LaPointe and Andy Hawkins pitching.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is that 85, one of the fun things to think about is alongside, imagine if Babe Ruth had a Cracker Jack card, is what if there were expanded playoffs in 85? You had what, a 97 win Yankee team
We
and
had
a
97 wins. Yeah.
97 win Mets team? That Mets team with Gooden and Strawberry and Carter and those guys, like it in short series with, it's like imagine Mattingly, Henderson, Winfield in a 5-game set. I mean, if they get hot, I mean that who knows, man? That could have been a Subway Series. Who knows?
Willie Randolph. We had.
We had
Hey,
fun, man.
I can't forget because before we end this or whatever else, I have to ask you. I know you have some of the most incredible cards I've ever seen, but do you still have like a grail card or a card that you're still searching for that you want that you haven't got yet?
No, that signed Mantle was the one.
That was it, right? Okay.
I didn't think I'd get it. I remember when I found out it was available, and I showed my brother who's here visiting me right now, he's in the back of the house, and I remember I showed it to him. I was in Europe, and I said, look what showed up. He goes, forget about it. He goes, that's gonna be, we both thought it was gonna be double what the price was. And then when I told him, he was like, I think you got to get that. I was like, time to sell everything. So I pretty much I sold everything, but I sold everything but this, and where's the other one that I kept? Hold on. And this.
Oh, man.
That
I love that's the card, man. I ain't gonna lie.
And then
that's one of my
rebuilt.
favorite cards of all time.
Yeah.
Well, this one is crazy because the centering is unbelievable and it's focused. You can see with this card, you always want to look around the bat, you want to look around his body, and the NY symbol. You want that NY symbol pinpoint focused. And so
now, did you get that card? Was it something you bought online or you picked that up in person?
This particular card surfaced on eBay at the time for a really, really premium buy it now. I knew immediately because again, I had been what happens is when you search for a long time, when you're shopping for a long time, you begin to get to know the card. You begin to get to know the pool of the card that's out there. That's what happened to me. That's how I got the 4-5. Because when I first decided I wanted one, I was shopping for one, and I wound up getting a 3. And this must have been 2009-ish, 2008, 2009. And I shopped and I shopped and I shopped, and I noticed that I couldn't find them centered. I knew how much money I had to spend, and they were all tilted or they were all off-centered. And I found one that was like, okay. But the second I got it, it was so cool to hold. I couldn't believe I was finally holding. It was the first 52 Topps Mantle I ever held. But I was like, man, I wonder if I could ever find one that's like squared up. And it was like another 5 years. So cut to 2014, and I would look at them every auction house, and then there weren't so many auctions to follow. So every auction, every eBay, search, every day I would see. And finally, I got a call from a friend of mine who now runs Golden Vintage, and he was like, I found your card like this. I've never seen one centered like this. That's like south of a fucking 9. Like, you got to get this. And then at the time, everyone said I was an idiot. Everyone like, who, strangers, you know what I mean? Because I got into a bidding war with somebody for it and wound up spending so much more than what the grade went for. But after 5 years of shopping from the 3 that I acquired, plus the over a year I was looking for the 3, or looking for a card that became that 3. So there were about 7 years of shopping through 52 Mantles. I knew how uncommon it was to find one that was perfectly centered and nice color, right? So I knew, so that's the thing, is you get to know when you shop. You get to see like a sea of them, on eBay, on the auction houses, whatever card it is, right? Like right now, I'm looking for a 66 Palmer. Very hard card to find. Jim Palmer's slept on too, right? I'm looking for a 66 Palmer. The guy never gave up a grand slam in his whole career, I think. And I can't find one centered. I've been looking for like a month. So I don't give a shit if it's a 1 or if it's a 6. When I find one dead centered, I'm blowing someone out for it if it's enough.
I know it's fun. I know because I'm always looking for that card signed, and a lot of them out there, but most center. And like he signs a lot, so it's not a big deal. And his auto's doesn't go for that much. And as you know, once you auto it, there's still this perception that it should be worth less. It's a 2 or whatever it is. But absolutely, I cannot really find. There was one I saw at one point, maybe 3 years ago, but I didn't like the inscription. It was centered nicely, but I didn't like it was like, I forget what it was. I'm just not into inscriptions. I just like the beautiful autograph. But yeah, 66 Palmer is tough to find that. That's
unless you're lucky enough for it to say to your name.
Yeah.
I'm always like, I'd love to find a Mantle that he wrote to Matt. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh man.
Weird. It's funny. I got this on my desk. I know Joe has my mom was like, oh, I've got these books from from somebody at church or something. And I'm like, all right. And this is to Mel. This is a real deal. My mom just got this book for free and gave it to me. I opened it up and there was a scooter auto in there. And it's to some guy named Mel. I don't care. It's a
no, it's still fresh. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's great. Like my son's nickname is Don. We all call him Don, except for my wife. And so he's Don. And I found a Mantle autograph on a postcard that was to Don. So I was like, I gotta get this for him. It's just, so that's cool if you could run into it. But yeah, so for example, the 66 Palmer, I've been shopping for a while now for one, and it's like, holy shit, there's hundreds upon hundreds of them on eBay, especially, and none of them are nicely centered. So it's like when I see one, then I'll go for it. But in answer to your question, no, the signed 52 Mantle that was signed when he was a Yankee was my grail. That was my dream, to the point because I knew of it. I read the articles on it when it surfaced. I couldn't be in the bidding when it was initially sold by the original owner. I was like super dopamine adrenaline rush when it went down. I gutted the whole collection for it, but never been happier because it's something that I would never get again, and then you could rebuild, I mean, it's when you carefully wait and pick for all these cards, like I had all the Gaudy Ruths, I had a Shoeless Joe Cracker, all these cards that I loved, and you love them more because you spend time. It's easy if you're going, I just want a 7, I just want an 8, you buy any one. But if you really care and you're looking, each one, you remember how tough they were to find. So it's a little tougher to part with them.
True.
But you still have to do it for the true rarity over the ones you can get back maybe in the future, right? So I'm still looking for the Palmer. I'm still looking for the green Ruth there, but you could always rebuild. But you grab the one that, you'll never get again. You'll never get another chance to.
Joe, we talk about that all the time about I always say, if I'm looking for a certain card, would I get rid of 53 cards to get the one card I want? Easily, without a doubt. Because you could, like you just said, you could always rebuild. You could always get, you get 5 or 6 here, and all of a sudden you're back to maybe 10 cards that you really love, but you still have that one that was the card that you always wanted, that you always look for. So that's the great thing about the hobby. There's no rules. It's what you love. You go whichever path you want to go, whether it's raw, whether it's graded, whether it's signed, whether you want to, people get too crazy with things. It's what you love, and at the end of the day, it reverts back to when we were a kid.
Exactly.
It's all it does. Is there one set, 1 year that you love the most out of any cards, or it could be?
Yeah, it's the 80s stuff. 80s,
Yeah.
For me, it would probably, I love 86 Donruss, 86 Topps, probably would be the ones I go to. As a kid, 71 Topps always grabbed me. I love the lowercase letters, and I love the black was really badass. It was like the Darth Vader set, but it's real, like you said, it's really. The only way to go wrong is to not let you be the boss of what you're doing. That's the only way. As long as you're buying what you dig, it's great. And like you see, and you'll never go wrong if you let go of a bunch of stuff to get the one thing you really want. And then it takes time to rebuild, but that's what collecting is. You got to get the tougher piece, and because the truth is what you grab when you got them all out and you're hanging out with them and you're sipping a coffee or a drink or whatever beer. And the truth is the ones that you go to the most often, you know what I mean? You got to get in touch with that. You know, that's why I wind up going to Donnie's, to 84 to 86 Donnie's, sometimes more than I do the Mantles, you know.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I do the same thing. During COVID, I did I was on this like journey, and I got one card or memorabilia from every Negro League player that played in the majors. So there's 85 of them, and I had this sick thing, and it was like, sometimes the journey is better than like, now I have them all and they're all looking, they look great, but the journey was so fun to find guys that some guys didn't have an MLB card. So where am I going to find, am I going to go to get a minor card, or like maybe one of the Cuban cards, or like, so the journey, that's why I say the journey is the most fun thing when you're doing a project, or you're looking, like you just said, you were waiting 5 years to find a card.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's fun. It's fun. Even the wanting, the searching, well, especially when you're doing a project like that, because you're then, I remember when I was like, okay, I want one Ty Cobb card to represent him. That's a guy I should have represented. And then it's like, well, which one? And now you're reading about all these sets, and some were in bread and some were in tobacco. And it's like, you're learning about all these different sets, and then you can't help not, it's like you go down these rabbit holes, but they're very informative. You're learning about players you didn't know about, and sets and cards you didn't know about. Like that's how I remember first like stumbling onto, like, because my son's a lefty pitcher, and I was like, oh, let me look at lefty pitchers. And it's like I didn't really know Lefty Grove the way I should have. You know what I mean? And then you look at some of his cards, and like the 34 Gaudy is so gorgeous. So it's like what you were just saying about those Negro Leagues. That's the awesome part about the collecting, is like branching out a bit, from your wheelhouse.
True. Yeah, man. That's a really great project that Joe did. Very, very cool. And yeah, I absolutely, the hunt is better. I mean, the chase is better than the catch, as they say.
I like his Sinatra, but that's another project too. I could see in the background there. I didn't even know he had cards. And those are from what, 50s? 60s?
So the I actually, do you remember BVVG? What, it was like an old Beckett?
Yeah.
I bought like, there was like an 8 BVVG. That's his rookie, the 47 Turf Cigarettes, it's called. And I was like an 8 on there, and I sent it to PSA. Usually it's like a 2 grade lower. So I was like, if it's a 6, it's a 6. Came back a 6. I mean, there's only, I think, an 8, but there's a bunch of them on there. I got all of his 4 rookies. They're all like 47s, and so awesome. Yeah, it's been a ride. I just got like 20 of them back, and PSA too. It drives me crazy because like they have this registry thing, and you put the cards in. You want to build a registry, and then like when you get the cards, they change the name of some of the cards, so like I can't put it in the registry. So it's just like, it's just like after a while you're like, I got the cards, whatever. Who cares about the registry?
And the Marino, that Marino was huge. It's funny, he was a
the great thing about that Marino
in Brooklyn, Marino was huge, man. Everyone loved Marino.
The funny thing about that Marino is
Queens of in New York.
Yo, the coolest thing about the Marino is why I love that card. It's beat up, but that was my original card as a kid.
That's the plus.
And my friend, my close friend that I grew up with, his dad worked for CBS. So one day we were talking about cards. He's like, "Do you have a Marino?" He's like, "Oh, well, he's the stage manager for the Today, the NFL Today show." He goes, "Just give it to me." Like a month later, he sends it back, and it's signed Dan Marino.
That's awesome.
I was like, stuff like that is like, yeah, the card's beautiful, but that was my childhood card. Like,
that's got it. When you have those, I've got a childhood one that Daryl signed, but I've got one that my grandfather bought for me in '84 Donruss Strawberry. But what was a trip is only in Brooklyn, there was a card store in the gun shop on Fort Hamilton Parkway. So there was Alpine Arms. So it sold guns next to the Fort Way 5 Theater, but then there was also cards. So it was like guns and cards. It was I think there was a way to put a card shop in Brooklyn in like every possible shop and store. They had them.
We came up in the best era. That's why.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I'll do this anytime, guys. This is a blast.
Oh, it was great.
Anyway, Matt, it was awesome to have you on. I don't want to keep you too long because I know stuff to do. But thank you so much, and you really provided some great insight, validating a lot of my own and Joe's stuff. Because sometimes I'm like, damn, should I? Because sometimes I'm thinking, I'm spending all this money. Like, should I just get the lower grade one, or because I can sell it for more? But then I'm like, nah, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to sell this shit until I'm gone anyway. I'll give it to the right. But yeah, dude, thank you so much, man. And this is great. I'd love to have you back, talk a little bit more about Renata Galasso. That was really cool because me and Joe, to her, she's like, legendary. We're just like, wow, because it's so mysterious. You can't really find too much info on her. So
it's so cool to just meet people who even know what that name means. I thought it was only me and my family. It's like, the only ones that still remember. That's awesome.
Anyway,
well, hopefully we won't have such commiserating to do with the Yanks, but until they're back in the series, we can still commiserate, support group style.
Yes, sir.
All right, fellas.
Awesome, bro.
Thanks, brother.
So much, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Anytime.
Absolutely. That was awesome.